Hey everyone, welcome to today's edition of One Single Story. It's March the 9th, and we are in Numbers 33 is the passage that we've chosen today, verses 50 through 56. So only a short 6 or 7 verses here that we're going to talk about today. And let me just read the whole passage. That's the easiest thing. It says, while they were camped near the Jordan River on the plains of Moab, opposite Jericho, the Lord said to Moses, give the following instructions to the people of Israel. When you cross the Jordan River into the land of Canaan, you must drive out all the people living there. You must destroy all their carved and molten images and demolish all their pagan shrines. Take possession of the land and settle in it, because I have given it to you to occupy. You must distribute the land among the clans by sacred lot and in proportion to their size. The larger portion of land will be allotted to each of the larger clans, and the smaller portion will be allotted to each of the smaller clans. The decision of this sacred lot is final. In this way, the portions of land will be divided among your ancestral tribes. But if you fail to drive out the people who live in the land, those who will remain will be like splinters in your eyes and thorns in your sides. They will harass you in the land where you live, and I will do to you what I had planned to do to them. So the first thing he says is, when you get there, get rid of them all, drive them all out. You know, some passages will say kill them all. You know, you got to destroy them all, whatever. Whether you run them out, kill them,
they got to go.
Yeah, and let's be clear here. This is a conversation that in 2022 is still a conversation to be had. You know, that whose land is it anyway? You know, who's in charge? You know, there's still a debate that's going on. But why would they need to drive out all of the people there? What do you think the reasoning for it was?
Well, God obviously knew that if they did not, that they would begin to compromise their standards, their faith, their worship, the idols, the influence that was there would ultimately infiltrate Israel and would create problems for them. And he said, you have got to take some action. I find it interesting, this happens before they actually cross over. And he was giving them a heads up. You know, they've been looking for and talking about the promised land all this time. And they would spend 40 years in anticipation of getting to that point. And he said, by the way, when you get there, there's something you've got to do as well in order to fully possess it, to live at peace, and to be in harmony with me and what I have planned for you. There's something you have to do yourself.
Right. Sheryl, do you have any thoughts about why they might need to drive everybody out?
Well, a few chapters ago we were talking about how, you know, because the men had sexual relations with the women who weren't Israelites, then it led to idolatry, which led to lots of people being killed for that. So it was no longer part of their culture. And I think that this is, you know, relaying the same message.
Right.
That you can't, I think that God knew our weaknesses, and that he knows that we can't withstand a lot of temptations as well as we want to convince ourselves that we can.
Certainly. Yeah, we're not nearly as strong as we think we are.
Right.
Yeah. And then he says, not only do you drive them out, you got to destroy all their carved and molten images. So this would have been wood and gold, silver, and demolish all their pagan shrines. So anything that was an idol, you needed to destroy. And we're going to see over time, you know, this is going to be a challenge for them to do this. Why do you think it was important for them to eradicate the gods out of there?
Like, look, this is valuable gold. How
Right.
can we, you know, how can we waste this?
Well, do you think that they couldn't melt it down and keep the gold, or they had to get rid of it? What do you think?
Well, it says to destroy them, which I'm going to vote for melt it down and use it. And use it for good. That's my vote.
Yeah.
Yeah, the Israelites were already like, let's make a golden calf out of this.
Yeah. So, in the context of this conversation, the church environment I grew up in went to great lengths to try to eliminate any thing that could be mistaken for sin out of your life, and we couldn't go to the movies, because they didn't want certain things put into your mind, your heart. You couldn't go to dances, and those things seem simple and to a certain degree seem legalistic, but the reality is if we live a life, I can handle anything, and we allow everything into our life,
right,
we become corrupt and don't even realize it.
Absolutely. Yeah, little by little. In that same thought process, in a very similar culture growing up, it wasn't my pastor, but I had heard preachers even preach about the sinful effects and the dangers of television. And in our world today, you're like, you're out of your mind. But you fast forward all these years to where we are now and see the availability of what comes in and through that. There was actually some wisdom in the warning.
Yeah, I've heard it called television.
Television, yeah.
And the rabbit ears, which nobody listening probably has any idea what that is, were the horns of the devil.
But it goes to show you anything can become an idol.
That's right.
Anything can become a distraction, or anything can be used for good. Our hearts are what makes that big difference. But the reality is there are some things that are around us and before us that make it much easier for us to make the wrong decisions based on their availability.
Right. So then it says they divided up the land, and the larger clans got more land, the smaller clans got smaller land, and we make a lot of fuss about the word equal. All right? So honestly, it's not equal. So equal, truthfully, equal is every tribe gets exactly the same amount. That's equal. That's the definition of equal. 2 equals 2. That's not how it was divided up. What are some of the challenges of equal? In parenting, spirituality, church, what's some of the challenges of equal?
Take parenting, for instance. If you've got more than one child, to say that everything has to be equal, I think it is a misnomer, because every child is different in their personalities, their behaviors, and so what you allot to them sometimes as it relates to time or other investments that you might have may not be equal, because equal may not be best for them at the time. When you were just talking about this division here, we see that even in our own government as it relates to the representatives that we have in Congress. Every state doesn't have an equal number of representatives. It's based on the population of each state, and so therefore they differ.
Yeah, even in the congressional thing, there is an equal, 2 from each, and then there's a population based.
That's right.
And it can get confusing.
And it changes.
One side thinks they're better than the other. It's a real challenge where that's concerned. Interestingly enough, all 3 of us have a boy and a girl, and equal between a boy and a girl looks different. The not just the time they need, but their interest, how you deal with them, the wisdom they need.
Sure.
Anyway, so he says, if you fail to drive out the people, all of the people, those who will remain will be like splinters in your eyes and thorns in your sides. The thorn in your side didn't bother me so much. The splinter in my eye bothered me.
That's a bad deal.
That's painful to think about. Irritant. I've gotten things in my eye, and it's irritating. And you rub it, you try to get it out, try to wash it out, but what are some ways that we get rid of part of things and not all of it, and it comes back and causes problems? Sure.
I think that's lots of things in our lives. Because to completely eradicate some things in our lives that we know are causing sin is going to be time consuming, it's going to be sacrificial, uncomfortable. I mean, there's many different examples I can think of where for us to feel like well, we've done a good job to get,
Right.
To get that much taken care of. I think we're good to go.
I'm
We'll
only
move
going to
on.
sin on Saturday.
Well,
Right. Well, you know what I'm saying. I mean, we're not doing it every day. I got control of it because I can do it just on one day.
Right.
But it becomes this irritant
Yeah.
still.
Yeah, based on what he says here, it will come back to get you, even if it's just a small portion. And that would apply to any bad habit, bad decision, and it could be in finances, it could be in relationships. I often use the marriage as an analogy because it fits so many things that I can work on and clean up and do better in 15 areas, but if there's one area I fail to address and I don't deal with it properly, eventually it is going to come back and create an irritant.
Yeah. Well, I can think about it in terms of, I think it often becomes an excuse too. So in terms of food intake, if I'm working on what I'm eating, how I'm eating, and then one day I'm somewhere and all they got are ham biscuits, and I eat a ham biscuit.
what's wrong with ham biscuits?
Nothing. But then I go, what happens is I go, I've blown it. So when lunch comes, I'll just eat whatever I want to. Dinner, I've already messed it up for today. And then, what happens is the next day, starting that process over again. Whereas if I just said, all right, I've done this, but I need to move on. And that's so hard to do. Anyway, it closes by saying, he says, they will harass you in the land where you live, and I will do to you what I had planned to do to them. This statement here, I don't know that I have the full answer to, so it's a good time for us to hash it out, because this one has troubled me a little bit. Why did God say, if you don't do what I say, I'm going to do to you what I was going to do to them? What do you think he meant by it? What do you think he had planned for them?
I think for me the easy answer, if that's such a thing, is that he knew for them to not walk in complete obedience, not to get rid of every one of them, not to eliminate all the idols and shrines and things that he was very clear about, would mean that eventually they would make the same choices, decisions, have the same sins as those people did, and therefore what he was going to impute to those people were going to be imputed to his own people, because eventually they would look like them and be like them and act like them, and therefore he was going to judge them accordingly to them.
Sheryl, you?
I agree. I think when I read it, it feels double fold, because I feel like he's asking them for immediate obedience, on the front side. But then I agree with Jay that the second part of that is, I know what's going to happen to you, and I know what kind of people you're going to become if you don't do what I'm asking you to do, and then you're going to get judged the way that they would have gotten judged, because you're going to be doing the same things they're doing.
Yeah, I agree. All right, let's close today in prayer. Dear Heavenly Father, thank you for your word. Thank you for the challenges of your word. Thank you for the reminders that obedience is important, that complete and full obedience does have its blessings, and the lack of complete obedience has its consequences. Help us to understand the dangers of limited obedience and the splinters it puts in our eye and the thorns it puts in our side and the constant struggles that we'll have until we allow you to work those things out in our life. May we be completely surrendered to you and obedient. In Jesus' name, amen.